Hello guys, welcome to the second part of the most underrated players for each team. This podcast will consist of the Western Conference's most underrated players. Of course, we have covered the Eastern Conference's most underrated players. If you haven't seen that, please, there will be a link in the description. You can go down and watch that. And so for the first team, we are going to do the Dallas Mavericks. I have chosen Kristaps Porzingis. Now,
okay.
Obviously, a guy coming into the league was a beast. Could have been Rookie of the Year. I think he had a few injury issues, but he's an absolute beast with his shot blocking. Obviously, he's 7'3", so he's going to be able to block shots. But he's a very good scorer as well, and I don't think people have given him enough credit. Like, I've seen people call him trash. Obviously, he came off an ACL or an Achilles. I think it was an ACL. So he's going to take a bit of time to get back to his best form, but for his career, he's averaged 18 points a game. This year, he averaged 19 points a game. So he's actually improved in his scoring, as well as his rebounding, and his assist totals as well. So, strangely enough, he's sort of being overlooked by a lot of people. I think probably because Doncic is there. I don't think he's maybe being used to the best of his ability, but he's going to have to learn to play like that because him and Doncic can be a very good duo. He's not the lone player like he was in New York. But he's actually improved and had probably his best season since he's come into the league, despite being overlooked as a good player.
Yeah, he's come back and been really solid after, he didn't play for 2 seasons because of that ACL.
Yeah.
And he's come back and he's just been very, very solid. And yeah, great pairing to Doncic.
And just quickly, he's only 24 years old, so
yeah, there you go.
He's got a lot of time
very
left.
early in his career. They're a very dangerous team because he's 24 and Luka's 20.
20.
Like,
that's gonna be a good duo, a great duo.
That could be very dangerous in the future.
Indeed.
Well, I went for the brother of, in my opinion, the greatest point guard of all time, Seth Curry. So Seth Curry, a lot of people may say he's not underrated, but I believe he is extremely overrated. Probably a big contribution is his brother. He just gets overlooked very frequently, but guy's averaging 13 points a game, which is up from last year at 7 points per game. And if you want to look at percentages, this year he's shooting 45% 3. Last year he shot 45. Year before that 42.5. Year before that 45%. So I mean, that the Currys just have shooting blood in them. And to top it all off with Seth, he's on 7 million a year. So
yeah, that's bang for your buck.
For sure.
Literally, Mike Breen, bang for your buck. So the Denver Nuggets, I have said that Jeremy Grant is their most underrated player.
Okay.
I really like Jeremy Grant. He's a Washington native, so I would love him to come to Washington. He's been linked to come to Washington many times. He's been around for a fair while, actually. He's came in the league in 2014. I was a bit surprised with. But shooting-wise, he's improving a lot. He went from having about 4 or 5 seasons averaging around 5 to 6 points a game. He's averaging just under 12 points a game now, and his shooting's not his strong point, it's his defense. He's averaging about a block a game. In fact, he has averaged about a block a game for his entire career, which is pretty tough to do actually in the NBA. Because he's only 6'8". He's got a really good vertical leap. I think he's just going to be a steady improver in the league. I don't think he's never going to be an all-star caliber player or a team that a player that a team relies on. But he's going to be a steady improver, and I think can be if he averages around 12 points a game, a block for the rest of his career, I think he's going to be a solid role player.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. So my pick is Michael Porter Jr. I think the fact that how they play him is just terrible. They don't give him any minutes, which makes no sense to me because obviously he has had issues with his back injury. Well, if we go back to his high school ranking, he was the number 1 ranked player in general, and was honestly looking like he's going to be the number 1 pick before his injury. But what doesn't make sense is since he's come back and he's fully healthy now, they just don't give him any minutes. I mean, the small amount of minutes he plays, he gives them 8 points a game, 4 rebounds. So still pretty solid stats for the minutes he gets. But and he's on $3 million a year. So I mean,
yeah,
I think a very solid player.
I agree with that. I mean, I don't know a lot about Michael Porter Jr., but he's, from what I've heard, he's definitely a very good player. And I mean, he could have gone like top 3 in the draft or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's definitely going to be a good player in the future. Now, for the Golden State Warriors, I have said Andrew Wiggins. And again, might be an unpopular opinion. I think, despite what people are saying, I think he is slowly improving as a player. I think the Warriors will help him because on the Timberwolves, he was just taking really bad shots. I feel like being on what I think will be a good team again once Steph and Clay get back, he's not going to be able to do that. He's not going to be able to take bad shots. Steve Kerr won't allow that. He's also not going to get as many shots because Steph and Clay are going to be taking the most shots there. So I think he's going to improve as a player just from being on that team. He's averaging 22 points a game, 5 rebounds and 3.5 assists. Kind of hard to judge if that's good or not being on the Warriors because he really is the only decent scoring player there, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he's starting to show that he can take a bit more of a leap in his career. And he's on a lot of money. He's on $27 million a year, so he's really got to start proving himself. And I'm going to back him to be able to do that for sure.
Alright, nice. Well, I selected Kevon Looney. I really like Looney. He's not necessarily a stats man, like he doesn't really put up many stats, but if you watch, like I watch a lot of Warriors games mainly for Steph, but you sort of see the impact that he has on the floor. He's also somehow like a clamps defender. Like I remember last year, like they kept putting him on James Harden and he was like clamping up James Harden. I mean it's not really a good thing because James Harden's not even good. But Kevon Looney, and one of the best impact players in the league, and he's on $4 million. I would love him to be on my team.
Nice, I rate him as well as a player, definitely. Alright, now for the Houston Rockets. I have selected Robert Covington.
Okay.
I think he's a very good player. I think he's been tossed around the league maybe a bit too much. I think he just needs to find a home somewhere. I think Houston could be that place. I know they play him at center, which is just random. He's only 6'7". He's a small forward, maybe power forward, but defensively he's a very good player. He's a very good player. He's a good 3-and-D guy. He averages just under 13 points a game. 3-point shooting wise, he isn't the greatest 3-point shooter, honestly. He shoots about 35%. But I feel like for whatever reason he shoots way more efficiently than that. I thought honestly he was going to be a 40% 3-point shooter, maybe just under. I don't know, maybe it's just his shot selection's pretty good. He doesn't take bad shots, so you don't really notice the ones he misses. I don't know, I think he's a very strong player. salary-wise, he's on 11 mil, which I think is probably about right for Robert Covington.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, solid.
Yeah.
Well, I chose PJ Tucker. Yet again, not necessarily the biggest stats guy. I mean, he puts up 7 points a game, 7 rebounds a game, and almost 2 assists a game. But just a really high energy, quite Pat Beverly-esque defensive presence. He was really good against the Warriors last year. And then obviously was taking quite what's the word? Like, he was very happy to Steph Curry's performance in that series until that last until he came back. But yeah, I just feel like a really solid defensive player, and only 8 mil. So
the Los Angeles Clippers, a very good team. They were my pick, actually, to win the championship. I have picked a player that's only played 1 game there so far. Just 1. Actually, no, he's played 9. He's played 9 games, sorry. He started 1 game, he's played 9 games. And that is Reggie Jackson. Now, a player that on Detroit was really seen as just a bad player. And I wouldn't disagree with that. He had a lot of injuries, which doesn't help. But I think he's a solid role player, a very good role player. He's not a guy that you can have to try and be your best player like he was in Detroit. It was like him and Drummond, and that just didn't work. But I think being on the Clippers, who have a lot of firepower in Kawhi, Paul George, Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, they have a lot of guys that he can work with and just play his game. I think if he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be a really solid piece to that puzzle. Because I mean, he's better than, you know, a lot of role-playing point guards. He'd probably be one of the best role-playing point guards in the game, in my opinion. And that's what he is. So I think he's going to be really, really solid. He's only on, believe it or not, $700,000 for this year.
Really?
I don't know what it's going to look like next year, if he's going to still be there, but I would, if he's only on that much money, you know, he looks like he's going to accept a very minimal contract. So if you could get him for $2 million or less, I would, you know, that's a great pickup, I think. You know, not as a starting point guard, but if he's come off the bench, he's going to do a lot more than a lot of other players in the league.
Yeah, well, that is a massive selling point for me. That he's only on $700K.
That's crazy, yeah.
Well, I chose Marcus Morris. I'd say he's definitely on the... Where did he came from? New York.
Yeah.
I believe, before going to the Clippers.
Yeah.
And he was playing so well in New York. I mean, he was averaging 20 points a game, 5 rebounds a game,
and he was at
assists a game.
He was at Boston the year before as well. Yeah, and he was very solid at Boston.
Well. Yeah, he's just a very solid player, sort of like in that tier of not an all-star,
just an above-average player.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of like a Tobias Harris sort of player, not an all-star caliber, but he's, you know, inches away from being that level.
I mean, he's on 15 mil a year, which I would agree with is a solid amount. It's not too much. I'd say some of the players that we've talked about so far, when we say, oh, they're only on this amount, 15 mil is like a good amount for these sort of players. Yeah, so I think he's really solid. And he's also not a bad defender either, so... Yeah.
Good pick. So there are a couple of teams whose files corrupted, so unfortunately I'm just going to have to do these ones by myself, as I'm doing this later on after we've recorded it. So for this one, it's for the Lakers. I've selected Dwight Howard as my most underrated player. He's averaging 7.5 points, 7.5 rebounds this season. feel like Dwight has always been underrated, for the last few years at least. And with the Wizards, sure, he only played 9 games, but he averaged nearly 13 points and over 9 rebounds a game, so like that's very solid for a player that many say is just washed up and not good anymore. At Charlotte, averaging 16.5 points, 12.5 rebounds and 1.5 blocks, which in my opinion is the stats of an all-star center. Just definitely doesn't get that recognition that he deserves. Yeah, I think as a role player for the Lakers, I think he's an amazing player to have there, especially he's enjoying his basketball, he's playing healthy, and sure, he's not putting up the stats that he once was, but people seem to be recognizing him as a better player now randomly, even though he's not putting up anywhere near as good as stats as he was in the past. But he's definitely looking healthier and playing with more freedom, it seems. He's also only on 2.5 mil a year, so a very small contract, and he's doing his job. And so the other file that also corrupted was for the Memphis Grizzlies. For the Grizzlies, I've chosen as most underrated player to be Justice Winslow. I feel like this guy has got a lot of potential. He's only 24 years old, which is surprising to me, honest, because it feels like he's been around for a while. So he's still very young, he's still got a lot of potential. This year he only played 11 games, so definitely injuries has been an issue for him in the past as well. In his second year he only played 18 games. His first year was his best year playing wise, he played 78 games, which is pretty solid, but other than that he's yet to play over 70 games a year, so definitely durability is one of his issues, but hopefully he can get past that. This year he's averaging, in the 11 games he played, he averaged 11.5 points, 6.5 rebounds and 4 assists. He's gone from being almost a pure small forward to a bit of an all-round player. If we look at his assist numbers, they've continued to increase every year. As I said, he's averaging 4 assists a game, so if he was to average 5 or 6 assists a game, along with his decent rebounding numbers, and his scoring is getting better, his offensive game is improving. On top of his defensive game is probably his best area. I think he's going to definitely become a very solid player in the future. Again, it's just about him staying healthy and not getting injured. He's on 13 mil a year, and he will be for the next 3 years, so I hope for this guy that he can just stay healthy, and I think he can definitely prove what he can be. He had a few triple doubles in Miami, I remember, when he was playing the point guard role, I think when Dragic was injured, either last year or the year before. So yeah, he's definitely shown that he has a lot of potential, and I hope he can produce it. So next up is the Minnesota Timberwolves. I really like Minnesota. I don't know what it is about them. I've always liked them. They've always been sort of my second team, honestly. I don't know why. Like, they're not that good, but they're just I like them for whatever reason. And one of my favorite players in the league plays for them, and he is my underrated player. It's Karl Anthony Towns.
Okay.
I don't think he gets the respect he deserves as a player. He's averaging 26.5 points, almost 11 rebounds, and 4.5 assists. I think he's one of the top centers in the league. And he wasn't an all-star this year. I don't think he was considered an all-star snub. He's averaging 26.5 points, so he's in like the top 10 players scoring wise. He only played 35 games. Maybe that's potentially why he wasn't considered a snub, because he didn't play enough games. But he's always been a really solid player for me. And 3-point shooting as well. This surprised me, honestly. I knew he was a good shooter. He's really worked on his release speed and his consistency. He shot 41% this year from 3.
Wow.
Last year he shot 40%, and the year before that he shot 42%. So He's honestly an elite shooter. I think I classify anyone that shoots 40% or higher an elite outside scorer. Because it's very difficult to maintain that consistency. Yeah, I think with D'Lo as well, he's going to improve more because he's going to have someone else to handle the ball, and his points will probably go down average-wise, but I think he'll help Minnesota be a much better team in the future.
Yeah, that's a really good pick. I went with Evan Turner, a unfortunate ex-Blazer. I was a very big fan of Evan when he was with us, and in that series, in our whole playoff run last year, he was really solid for us. Gave us good minutes off the bench, good points. Really liked that sort of upper block with a little fadeaway. It's just so he doesn't miss it. He's on more than I expected, and similar to Otto, I'd say 18 million is way more than he would be worth. But I still think, based on what you get for him, it's pretty solid. And like, he's one of those players, if you watch games that he's in, the impact he has on the floor is really evident.
For the New Orleans Pelicans, yes, the New Orleans Pelicans. I have selected Jackson Hayes as my underrated player. A first-year player, which I think is the first that we've done as a first-year player to be put on the underrated list. I just think this guy has a lot of upside. He's not a great offensive player yet, but he's still averaging 7.5 points, which isn't bad for a rookie. And four rebounds as well. Shot blocking wise, he's averaging just under a block a game, but I think he has a lot of potential defensively, and obviously will develop more into an offensive player on what I think will become a really good Pelicans team, and he's going to be one piece to that puzzle that will make them really good, I think.
Yeah, Pelicans are actually will be scary good, will have the potential to be. I selected Josh Hart. Just a very solid shooter. He gets you 10 points a game. 6.5 rebounds, actually. I didn't realise that.
Really?
Yeah, for a small forward. He's now playing the small forward, but he is generally a shooting guard. He's 6'5", I guess, but 6.5 rebounds, still really solid. He's 24, still really young. As I say, great shooter. And possibly the most surprising thing for me is he's under 2 mil. So
it's a great pick. For the Oklahoma City Thunder, I have gone with Dennis Schroeder. I really like Dennis Schroeder. I think it's he's a very good player. He's kind of like what we said with who was it? I mean, I compared him to sort of Tobias Harris. Marcus Morris was the one. He's never going to be an all-star, but he's always going to be reliable, and you know what you're going to get from him, pretty much. He's going to be an above-average player, better than a lot of point guards in the league, but never going to be one of the top 5 to 10 point guards. But he's averaging 19 points a game, as well as 3.5 rebounds, and 3.5 rebounds, only 6'1", so it's pretty solid rebounding. And also 4 assists. So, I mean, he's a very solid player, I think. He's also on 15 mil a year, which I think is probably about right, I think, for his production.
I really like that pick. I selected Nerlens Noel from the University of Kentucky. So for just 2 mil a year, he's a very good backup center for Steven Adams. Gives you almost 10 points a game.
Next is the Phoenix Suns. I have picked Kelly Oubre Jr., a former Wizard. Again, it might be a bit biased for me to pick this, but this guy is a great player. Ever since he came into the league, he's been compared to potentially being a Paul George type player, like a solid three-point shooter, a really good defender. I think he's become that, honestly. I was really sad to let him go. I think that was the worst trade we ever did, because Austin Rivers is on the team. We won't speak about it now. Make me sad.
Maybe talk about the worst trade of all time.
Yeah, that could potentially be up there for us in the future. He's averaging 18.5 points a game, 6.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists. Every year, this guy has improved massively. His first year, he averaged 3 points. Then he went to 6 to 11 to 15, now to 18. So he's improving every single year. Next year, he could be averaging over 20. But defensively, he's an absolute beast. He gets the fans hyped up. He gets the team hyped up. And I think he could be an all-star in the next couple of years for sure.
Really, really solid pick. I like that pick. I went with Dario Saric.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he's only on, he's just under 3.5 million, so definitely not a big contract at all. And puts up some really good numbers, 10 points a game, 2 assists a game, 6 boards, hovering around 35% from the field, from 3-point line, and around 50%-ish at just general field goal. I mean, that's a pretty good. He's obviously not the first option, nor is the second option, but to have him at the third or fourth option, whether you want to put Rubio that third option or not, really solid. Mainly just a really solid shooter. Not the best defender. It's probably his weakest aspect of his game, but he can definitely get you some buckets.
For the Portland Trail Blazers, which is, of course, Mitch, your team. I said that Hassan Whiteside is the most underrated player for them. I really like Whiteside. I know he has a lot of people saying he's lazy. I probably don't watch enough Portland games, if I'm honest, to determine if he's lazy or not. But stats-wise, if he's lazy, stats-wise, what will he be if he's not lazy? Because he averages almost 16.5 points and over 14 rebounds. I think he leads the league in rebounding. Potentially, Andre Drummond might just beat him, but I feel like he would be, definitely top 3. And shot blocking wise, he averages this year 3 blocks a game. I think it's enough said. If he's lazy, then what could he be if he's not going to be lazy anymore?
Times he can definitely be lazy, but on the whole, I'm very happy that we picked him up. He's done nothing but wonders for us, and he really filled the gap when Nurkic was injured. Obviously, Nurkic starting to work his way back in now. But when we had that gap at the center position, he filled it tenfold. He was fantastic for us. So I've picked, which will be the second first-year player to be on the list, Nazir Little. So he's our rookie. This is the best explanation I'll be able to give, because I would watch the most Portland games out of any other team. So he is on his rookie year, his first year. He's only about 2 mil. So absolutely chump change for NBA standards. Obviously not for the regular human being. But he is such a spark plug when he comes off the bench. Gives us so much energy. Very solid defender. He is one of those players that really listens to what sort of the veteran guys say, and just does his job really well. Not really a stats guy, but if you watch games, you see the impact he has.
Next up, the Sacramento Kings. My pick is, in my opinion, probably the most underrated player in the entire league. Right here, okay? And it's Jabari Parker for the Sacramento Kings, that is. This guy's 24, which is scary. Whenever I think of him, I always forget he's 24. I always think he's 28, 29, because we remember back when he was on Milwaukee, how good him and Giannis looked together as a duo. And unfortunately, he had 2 or 3 ACL injuries. Just couldn't stay healthy. and that's also been the issue for his entire career, which has been his health. You look at the games played. The most games he played was 76, which is in his second year. Since then, 64 games is the most he's played, and he's played 30 games or less, 5 different seasons. So he's really struggled to stay healthy. But this year he's averaging just under 15 points, 6 rebounds, and just under 2 assists. On top of that, his contract is only on $6.5 million, and I think this guy is a really, really good player. He's got speed, he's got finesse, like his passing and his IQ is really good. From what I saw on the short time from the Wizards, he's also a really good dunker as well. Like that's what made him so good with Giannis. They were just like, it was so similar the way they played.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like Jabari Parker as a player.
That's a great pick. But yeah, unfortunately his injuries are probably the biggest thing that have held him back, which is just out of his control, unfortunately. So I've gone with a ex-Blazer, Kent Bazemore. Obviously didn't spend a lot of time with us. But honestly, when he was with us, one of my favourite on our team. He was so good when he came on, always gave really solid minutes. He's giving you 10 points and 5 boards with an assist thrown in there. Also, for his whole career, has averaged over a steal a game, which is pretty good as well. A pretty solid, not necessarily a 3-and-D guy, because he doesn't have the best 3-point shot. He sort of likes that sort of mid-range a little bit more. But a solid defender, and solid scorer.
The San Antonio Spurs, I have picked Rudy Gay as the most underrated player. Obviously was a really good player back in the day. Kind of dropped off, but at the same time he didn't really drop off. I think he just... I know that sounds weird, but he had injuries that didn't help, yeah. But he's always been a solid scorer. His last 3 years, he's only averaged, across those 3 years, probably about 12 points a game. But I think he's definitely improving as a veteran player. I think he's helping out the teams that he's on, especially at the Spurs. I think he's just been a good pickup for the Spurs. His efficiency's gotten better. He's on 14 mil, so it's probably about right for him. I don't know. I really like Rudy Gay. I think he's a solid player.
Yeah, and has always, as you said, been a reliable scorer pretty much from when he came into the league. So, I chose, and this is probably for me one of the most underrated players in the entire league, Derek White.
Okay.
I really love Derek White. The first thing is he makes less than $2 million a year, so very, very cheap. I think it was the series last year against Denver, the 7-game series that they had. He was probably the best player in that series. He was so good. When DeMar DeRozan wasn't showing up as usual when it matters, Derek White did, and he had some hype moments. He had a massive poster dunk. But I think he's really solid. And gives you 10 points a game, 3.5 assists, 3.5 rebounds. Just solid numbers around, and he's also probably the Spurs' best defender besides DeJounte Murray. So.
And last but not least for the Western Conference, the Utah Jazz. I have picked Bojan Bogdanovic. He was a second-round pick, and he's averaging 20 points a game this year, as well as 4 rebounds and 2 assists. I think every year this guy's improved as a player. He's 31, as we speak. But yeah, every year he's improved. He's gone from 12 points to 14 points to 18 points to 20 points. And 20 points, if you're averaging more than 20 points, I feel like you're a very, very solid scorer in this league. Look at his 3-point percentage. The last 3 years, he's shot over 40% from 3. Shooting 41% this year. So he's an elite 3-point shooter. As well as a very good free throw shooter, 90%. So he's a walking bucket, in my opinion. Defensively, he's not great. I know that, but I think his offensive numbers make up for that.
I went with Ed Davis, so yet again another ex-Blazer. Pretty cheap contract, around $4.5 million, which seems to be most of these players are sort of hovering around that. There are some sort of outliers to that. Was really solid for the Blazers. Just one of those energy players. Yeah, there's not really much to say about Ed.
Obviously, playing on the road, there's not going to be too many fans of your team, so they need to get some momentum and energy from somewhere. So it's good to have guys like Ed Davis, as you say, an energy guy to spark up the team when they need it most. Well, that brings us to the end of the Western Conference team's most underrated players. Of course, if you haven't seen the podcast for the Eastern Conference most underrated players, there'll be a link down in the description. But we do thank you for listening and tuning into this podcast. If you have any thoughts yourselves, any opinions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'm very interested to read who you think are underrated players. Stay tuned to the channel for more podcasts and other videos that we will bring to you guys. So make sure you're subscribing and liking the video too if you did enjoy it. And we'll see you in the next one.